My name is Rich Kenah. I'm the Executive Director at Atlanta Track Club, and I'm here with Mike Cosentino from Big Peach Running Company. We're in the midst of a COVID flare-up here in the Southeast, so we are wearing our masks as we should.
Yes, indeed.
But we are also socially distant. So if you're okay with it, why don't we take off our masks for purposes of this conversation?
Sure.
And then when we're done and we're cleaning up, we'll put our masks back on.
Sounds good. These benches are terrific.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us here this morning. I'll start out by doing a bit of a level set. So Atlanta Track Club, 55-year-old nonprofit with a mission of impacting health and wellness through running and walking, not very different from your mission here at Big Peach. But throughout our history, we have stayed out of politics. We are a nonpartisan, apolitical organization. But over these last few months, we stepped into this conversation on race, and we stepped in right around the time that the news of Ahmaud Arbery's killing became known to the world, right? And we saw this as an opportunity for us to be part of a conversation because Ahmaud was running when he was murdered. So that opened up this door for us. So here we are in our common ground conversation. And before we get to common ground, I'd love to give you a chance to tell our audience who you are. I know you're an avid runner yourself.
Sure. Yep. Exactly. Well, thank you. And again, like I said, when you guys were kind enough to send the invitation, this absolutely is an important conversation. I'm really proud to be an Atlanta Track Club member, seeing the work that you guys are doing. So just to have this opportunity is pretty cool. So thank you. But yes, avid runner. You know, I've been a runner not from birth. People would say oftentimes, well, gosh, if you own running stores or you're in the running industry, you probably, went from crawling to maybe being in a jog stroller and then doing it yourself. I didn't pick it up, Rich, until I moved to Atlanta. And in my first couple of years, ended up in a position, put a lot of miles out of Hartsfield. And although I had been here in Atlanta, putting plenty of miles in as a cyclist, playing tennis on a regular basis, it didn't make sense, or it wasn't possible to take the bike or the racket with me. And I just kind of fell into running as a way to stay fit, make sure I was getting a little bit of cardiovascular exercise, and man, I fell in love with it. And before you knew it, it was the best place for me to be, at least up here. And being in so many other places, it was the best way to, see where I was, get to know both a location as well as people. And 1 mile led to another. 1 week of a certain mileage total led to a bigger total the following week. And it just came to be something that, was critically important to me and who I was.
And how long have you been here in Atlanta?
I moved here in 1994, so before the Olympics. Sure. And at the time, the city of Atlanta, of course, had this buzz about it because the Olympics were coming. And those first few years, they just flew by. And I would fully admit that as we got to 1997, 1998, I wasn't convinced that I would still be here. And now here we are, 2020, of course, over 25 years later, and I can't imagine a better place to call home.
So what's your favorite distance to race?
So as you start to pile on those mileage totals, and even now as you pile on the years, I have to say I still like the long distances. I mean, this year with what you guys did around the trials, it's awesome. Heck, I saw you. I wasn't so sure I wanted to see you taking that second lap for the full marathon, for the Publix Georgia marathon and half marathon, but I still like the longer distances. And I love to trail run. Yep. I'm an ultra guy. I'm a trail runner at heart. Certainly I love to get out and pound the pavement, whether it's on my own or with others, socially distant these days. Yep. But at the same time, if I can find a sweet single track, that's my jam.
Got it. So back to why we're here, sitting on these benches that are part of our Common Ground initiative, our Common Ground program, to have conversations on race and racism, specifically in the running community. When you hear the term common ground, what do you think of?
So I think common ground, there are probably a couple of synonyms at least that come to mind. Mutual, shared, and when I hear of common ground as a full term, I think it's that shared or mutual in the same location. The ground is shared, the endeavor is mutually beneficial. And I think for the Atlanta Track Club to use that term, it's reflective of the work that you're doing, not just here, but perhaps in many other locations, the Southeast, maybe even nationwide, as one of the leading organizations in this sport. And it is common, it is shared, it is mutual, it is ground that all of us cover together.
It's a shared physical space as well as emotional, mental, athletic.
That's exactly right. And whether it's athletic or whether it's as a citizen or a visitor to this location, certainly the lifestyle. You mentioned earlier that the mission of the Atlanta Track Club, the mission of Big Peach Running Company are very similar. Right there is common ground. Our vernacular might not be the same, but the intent is very close. That would be common ground.
Got it. You mentioned Big Peach there. Let's segue to Big Peach for a second. Give us a summary of your vision for Big Peach when you started it. And you're the chief running officer here, what it is now. And then we'll sort of segue into sort of conversations around the diversity of the running community here.
So, when it started and what it is today, at least from a mission perspective, and our belief that really the mission field, as some say, is ripe right now, given how many people are getting into walking, getting into running, thinking about their fitness routine in ways they haven't. The first page of the business plan, when there was no Big Peach, but it was just a concept to grow, to support, to enhance the pedestrian active lifestyle in and around Atlanta. And that has not changed. We're 15 plus years at this point, but that mission work is still the same as it was when we were out there peddling that business plan to different financial institutions, looking for a way to put some funding together, to find space, to purchase inventory, to put payroll together. So that hasn't changed at all. Now, of course, other things have, and this was born out of, another time in this great nation that was uncertain. The business plan was started on September 12th, 2001. It was 2004 before we actually were up and running. I'll never forget, and I'm sure everybody else is the same way who was around at that time, exactly where they were when September 11th occurred. And, kind of pirating that rental car that I had in Florida and driving back because I just wanted to be home. I wanted to be with my family. And knowing that in that time that I had moved to Atlanta up into that point, that running and this lifestyle I had connected with so much had almost selfishly been a pursuit that did not have the opportunity to positively impact others. It just bothered me in a way that I hadn't previously considered prior to that day. But at that point, I believed that my benefit from having engaged in this lifestyle the way I had over those last 5+ years could be similar or shared with others. And for the next 2.5 years, it was business planning. It was obviously trying to find a conventional financial institution. Getting lease space at the time with no track record was not an easy thing to do. As you know, working with manufacturers has a lot of ups and a lot of positive surprises in terms of what product or what programs. But the idea of just opening a new account with no retail experience, not exactly what they want to do on, every single day. So it was a long journey, but the mission has not changed since that first day that the first page of the business plan was written.
If you don't mind me asking, in that business plan, was there any reference to racial diversity in the running community back in 2004?
There was not, and I will be the first to admit at the time, not having even thought about it. Now, we've had to check ourselves even recently, and that's part of why I love these conversations. I am thankful for people who are willing to challenge us. Because if you look at that mission again, to grow, to support, to enhance the pedestrian active lifestyle, there's nothing racist or prejudicial about that statement. In fact, we've always said, man, everybody's welcome. This is all inclusive. But at the same time, there's nothing proactive in that statement, and there was not anything proactive in our measures or the steps that we were taking to get started.
So you referenced sort of your start in 2004. I've been the director at the track club since 2014. Mm-hmm. And it was right around that time that BGR, Black Girls Run, was seeing this exponential growth here in Atlanta and around the country. So one of the first conversations that I had when I arrived here was with the leadership of BGR, and at the time Tony Carey was one of those leaders, and I remember going and visiting her in their offices, and she just saw this this random white guy from New Jersey who probably came off as sort of arrogant and said, "Hey, listen, we want to work with you." and much like every other running organization in the country that had already knocked on her door to say, hey, listen, hey, how do we work together? It was eye-opening. It was educational for me. And I've said this, I've recalled this conversation to a lot of people over the years that I've been here. But her comment to me was the running community is not a bunch of old white men in shorty shorts anymore. And I think about that every day. And I think about the running community here in Atlanta as really the most diverse running community in the country as a result of just the diversity that exists in Atlanta. So there's a question coming here eventually.
Sure.
Do you see that diversity in your customer base, that racial diversity, let's say, that we're talking about now? And did you see that in 2004, and do you see it now, and how has that changed over this period of time?
Well, certainly Tony was right then, and she's even more right now, I agree. And the way that we had looked at it, and we've always said this, everything from the creation of our character icon to how we set our stores has been this belief that stereotypes in this lifestyle are dead. Gender, age, body type, race, all kinds of other things that would otherwise perhaps separate people. That's never been the case, at least in my relationship with running in and around Atlanta. And so we kind of took that for granted. And thank goodness we had noisemakers like Tony and others who said there's more to it than just recognizing that we're all different, but we share this, we have this common ground. If I look back 2004, even Rich, when you came in 2014 as a white boy from New Jersey, that, all that good stuff that Tony was right about also, but still you open your eyes and now here we are 2020. I don't know that I could say visually that much is different. Now, certainly there are things that I remember so wonderfully about even Black Girls Run, or we used to work with a program called Train to End Stroke. It was an offshoot of the American Heart Association. And similar to Team in Training, which has been a partner and has done amazing work for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, Train to End Stroke used the marathon distance as a way to both get people more connected with a fitness routine as well as raise money for a very worthy cause. But stroke, to a much greater degree, was impacting Black Americans in this community. And so all of a sudden we had this massive number of Black participants, which was totally different than any training group we had worked with. But even though that was back 2007, 2008, it didn't land on us as something that was hugely exceptional. It was just kind of a cool factor that came with being able to do this, being able to help people maybe take those first steps, get fit for the first time, and then bite off 13 miles or more and get to the finish line, raise their hands, rightfully so, really high, and not pay any attention to what color their arms were. So that was never the primary purpose. Now, I've had my eyes opened. I know many in this community have. I would like to think people around the world have had their eyes opened. And yes, it does matter. It's not just a great picture. It is a story that does need to be told, and one that needs to stand for something so that real change does happen. I know where we put our stores. Look at the communities where we have our locations. I'm going to be the first to tell you that it has taken this season for us to consider markets, not because we want to go somewhere and build a nonprofit or put a store together that can't withstand margins or some kind of profitability store that would suggest we wouldn't be there in 3 to 5 years. But now we're looking at communities that, quite frankly, were not on our radar before, and shame on us. And I love the fact that we're being challenged that way. Those are the things that I think will change in 2020 that we did not have our eyes open to in 2004 or 2014.
So that resonates with me. So the track club over the last 4 or 5 years does an annual registration for its members and for its participants. And over this period of time, the number of people who self-identify as African American, as Black, has essentially doubled, a little bit more than doubled. So I feel as if the work of BGR, Black Men Run, Running Nerds, Atlanta Track Club, Big Peach, is all moving in the same direction and bringing more people into the running community. But there's a lag when it comes to our staff. We're a relatively small organization. We don't hire new people very often. And our staff is not reflective of the racial diversity of Atlanta. And so we've got some work to do there. Where is Big Peach in that journey?
I was afraid you were going to ask, but no, I've already been very public about this on our own podcast, certainly with our team. So I will tell you very specifically, at the beginning of this month, 8.6% of those who are part of the Big Peach Running Company team are Black. Atrocious. Certainly not something we're proud of. Quite frankly, we hadn't even thought about that. 8.6% in a market like Atlanta. Now, how did that happen? And I could give you all kinds of reasons that could be said to be very legitimate, perhaps, even very well phrased, or maybe just excuses, but it doesn't change the fact, apparently, like the Atlanta Track Club, we have work to do. And quite frankly, we're pretty excited about doing it. Because the more diverse, of course, we are, maybe, just maybe, from some of the conversations I've had, the better we're going to be at serving this community, at serving the marketplace, at serving the lifestyle.
Yeah, I agree. I wonder if there is some collective work that we can do together in that area to show that our organizations welcome diversity of skin color, diversity of thought, diversity of age on our respective staffs. Because I have found it to be more difficult than I anticipated. And let's face it, this entire conversation that our industry is faced with, that the entire country is faced with, is difficult. And the only time you're going to get anything done is when you're being challenged. We talk all the time at the track club. The only time you're actually getting anything done is when you're mildly uncomfortable, much like a distance runner. You're mildly uncomfortable. You're actually getting yourself in shape. You're moving yourself forward. So it sounds as if, much like the track club, at some level you've had a light go off this year that say, hey, there's more to be done at Big Peach Running Company in this area.
And to be upfront about that, to be proactive. And you're right, it's hard. I've heard the expression, if it's really hard, you must be doing it right. And quite frankly, 15 plus years now, there have been some hard seasons. This year being a great example, of course, but not for the reasons that we're discussing right now. But finding great teammates and having our number one core value. We have 4 core values. We make no apologies about our number one core value. Our best business asset is our team. And yet we say that, and we think, over our history, we've been incredibly fortunate building a culture that people connect with. The amount of time, or what some would say in the HR industry is a turnover rate, really, really low. But we've never stepped into where the work is hard to find people who would be a great part of that best business asset, but don't look like the over 90% that is currently at Big Peach Running Company. That's not part of that 8.6 that is a problem. Here's one small example. Students, oftentimes in the local colleges, maybe as undergrads, perhaps as grad students, we've worked with Handshake and different apps out there. Where we're sitting right now, we're an easy kilometer or 2 from Oglethorpe. As you know, we have stores near Emory, Kennesaw State University, Georgia State. Working with Handshake or some of those other apps there, we had never been conscious about filling out the paperwork for the HBCU universities or colleges. We had just never done it. Why? I have no idea. And if it hadn't been for this season, we still would have not done it. Now, does that mean we're going to get great candidates and we're going to start to see applicants who are part of our team that are coming from those universities or colleges? I don't know. It's too early to tell. We're less than 60 days in. But at least we've done something to determine, could this be not just an improvement, but a way to make that asset, our best business asset, our team, even better than it was yesterday?
So a lot of what we've been talking about has been numbers, right? So things that we can measure. and what I'm learning is the numbers precede the culture. So it's clear to me that at the track club, we have to work on our staff culture so that so that if you are Black, you feel welcome and comfortable in the conversations you're having on a daily basis. And we're learning how to do that. But the numbers obviously have to sort of precede that cultural change. Is that something that you guys are talking about here in terms of that culture that recognizes maybe what we didn't know a few months ago or a few years ago, that becomes almost this self-fulfilling prophecy that is a hurdle to clear around racial diversity at the staff level?
So, I don't know that I have enough information yet, even internally, about what we didn't know. But here's what I do know, what we didn't do. Before this season, not once did I ask a Black team member, what's it like to be Black at Big Peach Running Company? What's it like to be Black as a fitness enthusiast in and around Atlanta? What's it like to be Black in any other capacity that we share, but that I can't put myself in your shoes? Never asked that question before. At this point, I've asked every single one of our teammates, and the answers are fascinating. None of them are a plan all to itself, and quite frankly, none of the answers have been so surprising that have been this basket of snakes that we can't wrestle. And hopefully they're not just telling me what, of course, I would want to hear, but we're getting good marks, of course. They're like, this is a great culture. We've got so much to work with. There isn't this big change we have to make. We just have to be more aware. That's why I love the fact that conversations are like this are happening. Questions like, what's it like to be Black at the Atlanta Track Club, to be an Atlanta Track Club member, to participate in an Atlanta Track Club event? The Atlanta Track Club, to your point, 55 years. How many times have we gone to those Black team members? Have we gone to the Black members who pay their membership dues every single year, that participate in those races, and say, what's it like to be Black in this capacity? And now there's this comfort level. At first, my palms were sweaty, and I'm sure my voice was shaking, and I'd go to my first teammate or two. Now it's easy, it's comfortable. In fact, it's something I look forward to. And I hope we can continue that trend well into the future.
So in this conversation, friends have to check each other, right?
I'd love that.
So as you look at the track club, through the filter of a vibrant running specialty organization, what can we do better in this area, in conversation on race, culture?
So, Rich, I think this is a big part of it. It's the conversation, because you're going to do something with it. Whether it's this conversation, but all the conversations you're having, you're going to do something with it. In advance of this, there's only one thing that I wanted to read. I could come up with lots of things, and we've been doing this. I read this at our mid-year meeting. We do our mid-year meeting in July, usually after the AJC Peachtree Road Race. That way we have that under our belt, and we can do a debrief on that event, as well as other things that have happened in the first 6 months. And I think a lot of people have gone back to this, heard this, whether it was in grade school or high school, whether it was for a college course or a thesis paper or what have you. The part from a letter from a Birmingham jail, to me, says everything we need to hear and be mindful of in this one part, even though all of it, of course, can have so much impact. And that is, actually, time itself is neutral. So here we are, this time right now. Time is neutral. It can be used either destructively or constructively. More and more, this is Martin Luther King Jr., more and more I feel that the people of ill will have used time much more effectively than have the people of goodwill. We will have to repent in this generation, not merely for the hateful words and actions of the bad people, but this is the part that is so convicting for me, but for the appalling silence of the good people. And I think about Big Peach Running Company, I think about the Atlanta Track Club, I think about a vast majority of the people who are out there. And yet I have to fully admit, acknowledge, without wanting to speak for anybody else, we have been silent. It has been the appalling silence. So having these conversations, being able to say to somebody, what's it like to be Black at Big Peach Running Company as an Atlanta Track Club member, is finally taking this and saying no more.
Yeah, that's well quoted. I'd like to think that Running City USA, as Atlanta Track Club likes to call Atlanta, can lead the industry, if you will, in this conversation, in this realization. in this work that over time won't feel like work. It'll feel natural. But right now, it's work, right? It's uncomfortable.
Sure.
It's
Yep.
what we're doing. I'm sitting in your space here, and I'm looking at least a couple dozen brands. You've got leverage as a result of your industry position here in Atlanta. Atlanta Track Club has leverage because of its size and its reach into the running community here in Atlanta. I wonder whether we can collectively send a message to the runners of Atlanta, to the walkers of Atlanta, to all of Running City, USA, by using that leverage to push the companies that we do business with every day to do what we're doing right now. How does that hit you?
Sounds terrific. And I will say I'm really impressed with some of the steps some of our brands seem to be taking. Now, I can't get inside their organizations. I certainly have no eyes on any plan they may actually have. But they certainly seem willing to engage in conversations, both with us and seemingly with the community, whether it's the same community we serve or another community based on them being a public company or other brands in different industries that they might hold. I do think this reckoning is on a scale that gives us a real opportunity. It's not, thankfully, in this instance, just Atlanta or just running. This gives us the ability, to your point, we've got leverage. What a shame it would be not to use it. Let's use it in Atlanta, in this lifestyle, Running City, USA. But to the fact that we can connect it through some of these brands, very specifically to other parts of our culture, of our community, of society, of this great nation, why wouldn't we do that? We've said that there are only 3 types of people on this planet. People who like to run, people who would like to run, and people who would like to run. Everybody falls into one of those 3 categories, okay? That's just our mindset. But we also understand that starting with running with everyone is probably not the right initiation for the dialogue. But maybe through a brand, through a relationship, through some kind of common ground that isn't this, we even have a bigger impact than what we would have ever imagined.
Again, well said. We, as I said earlier, jumped into this conversation when Ahmaud Arbery was murdered. When George Floyd was killed, Atlanta Track Club, much like every organization, for-profit, non-profit around the country, didn't know how to react. So there was that week where this entire country erupted, where Atlanta erupted with protests, and we had these great ideas on what we could post on social media and what we should do, but we ultimately didn't. But what we did do is we sent a direct message, an email to our members, and said, we've chosen not to say anything, but please don't read into that. We've decided that we're not ready to say anything because we're not part of the solution yet. And we're going to go back to work. And this is part of this work now. And as part of that communication, I said very clearly, but we recognize and understand that Black Lives Matter. So there's a lot of people in our database, a lot of members, and in the grand scheme of the large number of members that we have, did not get a lot of responses. Some heartfelt thank yous from a lot of people, but also some very vocal, small number, but vocal people saying, what have you done to the track club? You have entered into a conversation that a running organization should not be in. And so admittedly, I struggle with what is a running organization's role in this conversation, based on the fact that we're having this conversation here. I think you see where we as an organization have landed. But back to the Black Lives Matter statement. Why do you think it is so hard for people in the running community to simply look at somebody else and say Black Lives Matter?
That's a great question, and it's easy to default to, well, there's so many things, especially these days, it seems, that are politicized or political or intended to be divisive, and my goodness, I wish that wasn't true. And certainly, without being able to put myself in your shoes personally or the Atlanta Track Club in their shoes organizationally, what I recognize is the inability to both say and do what everyone is going to stand behind. But the cool thing is, and again, having been in Atlanta for 25 plus years, having been an Atlanta Track Club member for so long, I know what the Atlanta Track Club stands for. And by having this conversation, by making that statement, Black Lives Matter, you're reflecting what the Atlanta Track Club has always stood for. And there is no shame in that. And for those, in my opinion, who cannot connect with that, that's not something that we are going to be able to change for them overnight, just to get them to join us or sit on these benches with us and say these are the right steps forward. I know we've lost a number of guests because of decisions we've made, statements we've elected to put into the marketplace. It doesn't impact the sleep I have at night, because that same mission that we wrote in 2001, the same reason we open our doors every single day, and that best business asset is our team, with a responsibility to improve the team, and now with new ways and a new mindset of how we might do that. Wow, what a sweet spot to be in when we just know we're doing the right thing, whether everyone or only a few are going to join us in that.
So one last question, and then I'll let you get on with your day. Atlanta Track Club, as it heads into its next strategic planning cycle, it has made the commitment, is making the commitment on its programming side to invest in youth running more so than, we've obviously been heavily involved.
I was going to say, that's a big, you guys have always been awesome with that. I think about what you're doing with the Atlanta Public Schools. I think about Kilometer Kids. So I have no idea what you're putting into it next. But if you would say you're delinquent on it historically, I would argue that. I would certainly doubt that.
So it's funny you say that. So we thought we were doing a good job. And as we surveyed our members and our participants and other constituent groups, we recognized that we weren't doing enough. We weren't explaining what we were doing. But it's really interesting to at this point in history, in this time, you referenced Martin Luther King's reference to time there, we have an opportunity to double down on our focus and our investment in the next generation in Atlanta and around running and walking. And I know Big Peach spends a lot of time at the high school level interacting with cross-country and track and field athletes.
Most years.
Yeah, exactly, most years. We see, I'm not sure that that we can change a lot of people's minds who are, let's say, our age or older. But what I know we can do is, with conversations like this, get the next generation runner thinking about the impact of race in the running and walking community, in the track and field community. And I would push Big Peach, as you are going on your spike nights, and as you are interacting with local, club teams and high school teams, that you put the conversation of race out there, like Atlanta Track Club is going to be doing in the days and weeks and months and years ahead.
We would certainly join you in that, and this is so good for the lifestyle we serve. This is so good. This is not just us being generous or us committing to something that has a great maybe nonprofit bent, as the Atlanta Track Club is, but Big Peach Running Company is not. Sure, there's maybe that initial indication that must be what it's all about. If you think about the work that you're doing with the youth, or that we might do at a spike night, or we might do with a school, or quite frankly, we might do anywhere else, it is just good for this lifestyle. I think about, I had a conversation with one of our Black team members. He tuned me into a phrase I had only heard: Complete Streets Initiative. And diving into this 60-page document, what I can tell you is, in these communities, more Black residents than not, that the sidewalks are dilapidated, that the ability to run safely against traffic is compromised at best. The Complete Streets Initiative, is that not good for the lifestyle that we serve, for the pedestrian active lifestyle that's part of our mission? The fact that it needs to start in those Black communities is because it hasn't been done yet.
and it needs to happen. So getting behind something like that, that's easy. People can't even give us credit for that, quite frankly, because we're serving our mission when we want that to be the case. Because we love the fact that these are communities where our Black brothers and sisters live and where people who might be working on the Big Peach Running Company team at one point would be. But why would we not be part of that? The same thing with if there is a school that right now has 13 people on the cross-country team and more of their student athletes are Black than perhaps any other consideration, but next year they have 21 and the year after that they have 46 student athletes on their cross-country team. Is that not good for the lifestyle we serve? I'm in.
As are we. Between our two organizations, we've got 70 years of history here in Atlanta. But we are closer to the beginning of this journey than to the end. I mean, this is going to be a true marathon. And as I said earlier, friends check each other. So what I'm asking you is to check Atlanta Track Club, check me in and around this conversation around racial diversity in the running community. And you know me, I'll come at you and keep you in check as well. And I ask, in the spirit of this common ground conversation, that you find a home for one of these benches in one of your stores, and this home is a place where you and others here at Big Peach can have sort of the literal as well as the figurative conversation around how we move this conversation forward and lead this national, global conversation as it relates to running and walking and track and field and cross country for that first time, kilometer kids participant all the way up to that Olympic champion.
It is my pledge to do that, and certainly appreciate you being willing to do that for us. And again, thanks to you, your team, the Atlanta Track Club, for doing this. This is really cool. And man, I am genuinely enthused about the position that you guys have taken and the work that you're doing, and it's just a pleasure to be a little bit a part of it. Thank you.
Well, thanks for doing this.
You bet.
I'm not sure we solved any problems today, but at least we have an understanding where we're both coming from.
Well, and we made that commitment. We hold each other accountable, and we're willing to do the hard work, even if it is uncomfortable. Maybe that means we're doing something right, and at some point, progress will come, I'm sure of it.
Good stuff.
Good stuff indeed.
Thanks,
Rich,
Mike.
thank you.